We got one in Tampa in 3 weeks. The only place you can do, the only place I can find it was in Detroit. Talk about a box of rocks. Are you here the week of Thanksgiving?
Well, I'm not here Thanksgiving.
You hear that Tuesday? Are you gonna be at the meeting?
Before proceeding on to the next item, which is the prosecutor's office, I would like to call forward Director Parks, who is going to give us a briefing on an important matter regarding the county's budget bond rating status.
Okay.
Director.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of council, county workers, and guests. In an effort to make sure that we remain transparent and let the community as well as the council know what's going on from a financial perspective, I wanted to talk to about an issue with our bond rating and our credit rating with Cuyahoga County. As you know, last week on the 30th, we closed the deal for the Steel Yard Commons bond deal. It was about $4.2 million. And part of that process is we provide financial statements to the credit rating agencies. We also do a annual information statement, which is basically a very comprehensive look at the county's financial position. And then we also do an operating statement, which is basically the prospectus for the security that's going out. But the major part of that process is that the credit of the county is rated. And typically we use the larger rating agencies, which is Moody's and Standard & Poor's, to look at our credit rating, and they look at all the documents that I just mentioned. So both Moody's and Standard & Poor's recently reviewed our credit rating and in relation to the sale of those bonds. Both of those agencies agreed that the county's financial performance is very strong. Standard & Poor's continues to have a favorable opinion of the county's financial performance, including budget flexibility, budget performance, and strong institutional framework. In addition, S&P, which is Standard & Poor's, considers the county's reserve levels and liquidity to be very strong. Moody's commented that the county's financial position is expected to remain sound in the medium term due to history of prudent financial management, including timely responsive actions to revenue shortfalls and healthy reserve levels. One major change is that Standard & Poor's has completely reinvented the criteria for determining ratings. The new ratings criteria for local governments place increased weight on economic factors, including population trends. And if you're familiar with the county's bond rating, it was always the overall economic condition of the region that precluded us from getting that AAA status. That has always been the weakness. Everything else has always been very strong. The report cites a weak economy and average weighted population, a decline of 6.7% over the last 10 years as factors that contribute to the new rating. The report does classify per capita income levels as good and cites the county's efforts toward enhancing economic development as a positive factor going forward. But while the rating in the areas the county can control are strong or very strong, the increased weight, and that's 30% actually, that's the economic indicators are weighted. The increased weight of those indicators, and that is the way S&P looks at the local economy, changed the overall calculation and reduced the rating on our general obligation bonds. So the GO bonds, which is general obligation, went from AA plus to AA. The rating on the county's non-tax and appropriation secure bonds was changed from AA to AA minus. Now, I would like to point out that Moody's agreed with S&P on the county's excellent financial management, but has a different view of the local economy. Moody's commented on the county's strong financial base, and this is a quote: "The stable outlook reflects our expectation that despite historic trends of economic weakening of the regional economy, the county's credit profile will remain commensurate with the A1 rating. The county maintains a very strong credit characteristic, including currently sound reserves, as well as strong and proactive fiscal and operational management. If the county's ongoing economic development efforts were to translate to a healthier economy, as demonstrated by recovery in the taxable valuations, improved employment profile, and improved socioeconomic indicators, those improved metrics could factor favorably into the county's overall credit profile over the long term." So Moody's upheld our rating because they did not change the way that they operate. S&P's change is a complete recalibration based on a new local government rating criteria they created just in late September. There have been no changes in the fact pattern of the county's financial performance or ability to meet debt obligations. The new rating reports have not had a material impact on the county's ability to garner low interest rate on county-issued bonds. The recent sale, and that's the one that happened last week, of non-tax revenue bonds for the Steelyard Commons project was successful and attracted a wide range of investors interested in the deal. So what happened is S&P just changed the way that they rate governments, and over a 12-month period, they will be looking at all their ratings. We were one of the first municipalities to go through this because we had a deal that happened right after they changed their process. And that's the presentation.
Thank you for bringing us up to date on that development. Are there any questions? Councilman Greenspan.
Great, thank you. Just so I'm clear, Moody's kept us A1, no change.
That's correct.
S&P downgraded due to a criteria shift in philosophy.
That's correct.
How did that, and that change of philosophy, was that impacted in this bond that was issued on Friday? Did that rating decrease, or
the rating decrease was factored into the bonds that were sold on the 30th.
And how did that impact our debt service?
There was no noticeable impact.
So our interest rate was not impacted. We were downgraded, but our interest rate, our debt service was not impacted?
Right, and actually I have Tim Oftermatt, who's here from Stifel Nicholas, who does more of this, on a global basis. I don't know if he could speak to, how it affected us in comparison to everybody else. So if you want to come up. Yeah.
We appreciate having your expertise. Could you state your name for the record and then give us a report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Tim Oftermatt. I'm a senior vice president with Stifel Nicholas here in town. We served as the underwriter for the county's bond issue last week. I think it bears noting that what helps this county issue, as well as other county issues, is that it's a well-known issuer in the national municipal markets. Also helpful is the fact that the county is rated by more than one rating agency and more than Standard & Poor's. Moody's general obligation rating for the county is AA1, just to clarify that, not A1. And it remains as AA1. Moody's, in fact, made a definitive statement where they found that there was evidence of new economic growth in the county as well as diversification. So it was clearly different from the very narrow view that Standard & Poor's provided, which primarily focused on population trends over the last 10 years and a projected population movement going forward 10 years. The interest rates on the recent county bond issue were not impacted, in our view at Stifel, primarily because of the Moody's maintenance of the AA1 rating. The Standard & Poor's rating at AA for general obligation bonds, AA minus for this particular issue last week, still excellent, still in the AA category. I would note one last thing. given the experience of the last 5 years, generally institutional investors, which are often the primary investors in municipal bonds to begin with, and certainly the primary investors in municipal bonds during a low interest rate environment that we find ourselves in right now, are less inclined to have their rating decisions or their investment decisions only driven by the rating agencies. They will often do their own analysis of securities that they're looking to buy. And that's what happened in this case.
Thank you.
So if I can, so are you saying that this had no impact on Friday, and then on a forward-looking perspective, weighing all the rating agencies' ratings equally or in collaboration with one another, do you anticipate any increase in our debt service obligation as a result of this?
Mr. Chairman, to the committee member, I do not.
What would trigger an increase in debt service in our if Moody's followed suit or Fitch followed suit, then 2 out of 3 would be considered. I'm trying to understand where we need to be really concerned, because what I'm hearing is we shouldn't be concerned from a debt service standpoint. It's a different issue when we talk about strategy going forward, but I'm trying to understand when the debt service trigger is going to be impacted.
Mr. Greenspan, I would suggest that attention to what Moody's might do with regard to either changing its criteria or further recalibrations with its methodology for evaluating municipal credits may be a cause for attention. There's been no indication, though, from either the 2 primary rating agencies, and I will set Fitch aside for this conversation. There's no indication that either rating agency has any fundamentally new view of Cuyahoga County. The change in criteria is a very narrow focus, if I can make an editorial comment, on one portion of the economy. If the county's fiscal condition or other broad economic changes in the region were to change, then there may be cause for concern. But as of now, neither of the agencies, Moody's and S&P, are seeing that.
And just two further. One, can we get a copy from whomever of the S&P report? And secondarily, between September, I believe was when Mr. Park said that this new criteria went into place, and now, what's the experience been of other political subdivisions' ratings? Have they been impacted by this new rating system? Columbus, Cincinnati, peer counties of ours, or other counties throughout the country that have similar composition to Cuyahoga County?
I don't know the answer to that right off the bat. I would also say that there's not been a lot of municipal bond volume recently. The county was, we were told that the county was the first one to be rated under the new criteria, just happened to have a transaction to show them. We're not aware, and what we've been told by the rating agencies is they don't expect any widespread downgrades, any widespread upgrades. In the county's case, it happened to be a situation where in a region where there was clear population loss over the last 10 years, that impacted the county's rating. I think if we see, it'll be interesting to see what happens with other credits in the Great Lakes, perhaps Cleveland, perhaps others, what happens when they go to Standard & Poor's in particular.
Thank you.
Any, Councilman Brady?
I don't want to get too much in the weeds on this because I definitely get lost. But you know, part of what you're saying, I mean, when I think of Franklin County, I think of the fact that they've had a population increase increasingly, I mean, for decades now, but that a lot of people are now moving out into the counties outside of Franklin County. I know that 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 Hamilton County has, greater Cincinnati is largely located outside of Hamilton County. And of course, this is a large metropolitan area. I know we're looking at the county's ratings, but this is the largest metropolitan community in Ohio, even if Columbus is a larger city than Cleveland at this point. And but so, do they literally segregate out the Cuyahoga County from Medina and Lake and Geauga and Summit, and the fact that this is a gigantic community with that? I mean, because those lines are arbitrary to everybody.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Brady, you're exactly right. And I would say, in doing this for 30 years, that the rating analysts do typically take into account regional trends. They're not completely ignored, but the credit for the county is restricted to an analysis of the county. And in this particular case, Standard & Poor's is focusing specifically on one economic fact, and that is population loss. And unfortunately, they're letting that impact what's supposed to be a broad credit analysis. Instead of analysts examining the overall credit of an issuer entity, they're using very specific metrics, and they score a rating. And that's an unfortunate result for human beings in an analysis.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Greenspan.
Just one last question. When was the last time Cuyahoga County's any of its bond ratings was downgraded?
I can't remember one off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know the last time. I believe it's been at the levels that it has been for a very long time.
Can somebody find that?
Sure.
Provide that information.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Director.
All right, thanks.
Okay, next we move on to the Office of the Prosecuting Attorney, Mr. Timothy McGinty, and I would ask your cooperation, given the amount of business we have today, to be as brief as possible. But even more important than that, when we get to the questions and answers, that the answers to the questions be crisp, direct, and narrowly focused to the question that was asked. It would be really appreciated. Please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, council members, and I promise a crisp response. I want to thank you for your continued support of the County Prosecutor's Office in my administration since coming on board October of 2012. I'm very proud of the staff and the prosecutors who have been committed to making Cuyahoga County a economically viable and safer place to live, work, and conduct business by restoring public confidence. And we are making significant progress with your help. The budget request will help us focus and refocus the prosecutor's office on our law enforcement partners on the most serious and violent offenders in order to make our neighborhoods safer and thereby encourage people to continue to invest by living in an area, staying in an area, putting business into an area in its future. I'd like to point out a few examples of our success of making this a more efficient and effective office and thus county criminal justice system, which equals less victims and more justice for past victims. One of the most proudest efforts we've made and most successful efforts our office has made is this cold case DNA task force. We are going to prosecute 1,000 rapists. And many of these are serial rapists. Over 20% are turning out to be serial rapists. We have this huge gap that you've helped fund, and I thank you for giving us this funding that we took on temporary additional staff for during this next year period as we take on, we have this unusual opportunity with 4,000 rape kits sitting on the shelf. Detroit had 11,000, so we've got quite a few, but other people had it worse that were untested. By insisting on testing these, and I'm going to test beyond the statute of limitations when we can, we are discovering these patterns of rape and unresolved crime. And we are taking unprecedented steps of indicting John Doe's. No prosecutor's ever done this before. On these COTW hits, we are discovering serial rapists undetected, unknown, that have existed and are still out there. We've got 15 and counting. I've discovered every single one of these, and it took place in the city of Cleveland. Every single one of these serial rapists operated in the city. On the borders, they didn't cross the borders. They do a cost-benefit analysis. These habitual, violent, disgusting criminals. They watch what's going on. They watch what's most effective. These animals of the night, we think of them sometimes as stupid. Well, they are depraved, but they're not stupid. And we are making significant efforts and impact on these 1,000 prosecutions I anticipate on this case. We are going to remove or keep off the streets 1,000 of our most dangerous individuals. The Castro case speaks for itself. That was an outstanding effort with all the partners in law enforcement. We are getting on, and we are learning how to work together with these other agencies, all of these law enforcement agencies, from the federal to the state and local. The Madison case, which is a capital case with a serial killer in East Cleveland, it also points out the money and the frugalness of our office. We have this capital case review. We've gone forward on 2 of 22, 23 cases for capital offenses, capital eligible offenses. 4 of 37, I've removed the capital specs off a good number of old cases. Analysis shows that these cases cost millions of dollars each, and if our expectation of success is low or nil, it makes no sense to pursue these expensive litigations and waste our manpower, our limited resources, pursuing in what is a 98% probability loser. So we are focusing our efforts and our limited manpower on cases that deserve it, without question, and have high probability of success. And in essence, we're going to increase the number of successful death penalty cases and whatever deterrent value that goes with them. The Christina Atkins and the Pemberton case and the Gloria Pointer case show the first 2 were outgrowths of the Ariel Castro subsequent investigation. We're willing to relook at cases. We're willing to relook at, we're not omnipotent. We're looking that we made mistakes, that we missed perhaps clues, and now in hindsight with 2020 and other activities taking place in between, we've relooked at cases with excellent work from the law enforcement agencies, particularly the FBI and CPD in that case. We solved 2 more murder cases, rape murder cases in the Hispanic community. The Gloria Painter case from 1984, solving that from 105th Street, a case I knew well 30 years ago. It's a great relief to that family community, and it sends a message to these criminals that you can run, but you can't hide. We will follow you. And that's the message we want to send out there, and we want to send it to the families that we haven't given up, and then we will not give up. I hired, out of some hopefully forfeiture money, a fellow to chase the Bay Village Gloria Mahalovic case, Amy Mahalovic case. Another case. We will not give up, and we hired a fellow from the FBI. We're lucky to get him at a cheap price because he's so dedicated to conclude that case, who was partially responsible for catching Whitey Bulger, the Boston Irish criminal. There are a few Irish criminals out there, Mr. President. We're trying to keep them down and keep them in jail, the ones we have. The Internet Crime Against Task Force has continued its success, and we're trying to restore public confidence in a number of ways. Some of these are expensive, but well worth it. The Internet Crime Against Task Force is largely grant paid, except for some of the investigators. We are expanding it in its use and their expertise where the grants allow to include human trafficking. You've seen a couple recent massage parlor brothel type operations that we have shut down, and there'll be some corruption arrests coming out of those shortly. We are going to attack the market. We're going to attack the confidence of the prostitution market by arresting the Johns. We have a great concerted effort we've begun there. I am operating on the theory where there's brothels, drug dealing, illegal gambling, like these 62 internet cafes we closed down, that undermines public confidence. It's a reflection on bad government, bad police work, bad officials in a criminal justice system, and ineffective officials. We've been fighting corruption from the clerk's office convictions to others. We brought a conviction on this Ameritrust deal. We're continuing that investigation. We've closed basically through aggressive prosecution over the last several years, this mortgage fraud scam artist, the latest inductees into the Prison Hall of Fame here being on that regarded Blaine Murphy and Mark Toe. We are operating on the theory that this county's economic future depends on public confidence in its criminal justice system, that this is a place to live, to stay here in this city, in this county, and invest here, and it's paying off. We think it's paying off in many ways. That Castro case started as a disaster for this county. It looked awful, and this county rallied with a successful prosecution and a generous public who was so generous in their treatment of the victims, and right down to tearing down this guy's house and making in essence a park, and any other houses adjacent to it. We looked to continue this investment in the people of this office, of the county prosecutor's office. We are just people. 90% approximately of our office is staff. We're taking on new issues. We are in this effort to be transparent. We're putting our figures out. We're putting of success and failure. We're putting out where the crimes really taking place. We're creating public access to it on our internet site, as well as professional access by the police. We are going to let the public rate our performance. We're taking responsibility for the successful or failures in the criminal justice system. Our attorneys and our employees and staff are dedicated and grossly underpaid, but willing to be so because they're so dedicated to be here. Although I must note that I am losing people, and particularly minorities, because they're being pinched. Particularly other government agencies are taking them, offering them salaries I can't compete with, double the salary. I can't compete with that. They've got families to raise, and I want to keep these people that we have trained and working so hard, enthusiastically working for us. I know there's only so much you can do, but I ask that you consider doing it if you can to help us. I want to thank you for the support you've given us, and I want to introduce my Chief of Staff, Jane Platten, to conclude our presentation and answer the questions in a fashion you desire. And she's much better at it than I am, Mr. President.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, sir. The prosecutor's office will end 2013 in a surplus position, due mostly to not having filled vacancies in the latter part of 2012 and the first quarter of 2013. The administrative transition and the impact of recent PERS retirement changes caused us to experience an abnormally high turnover this year. Recently, the rate of resignations has curbed significantly. I think we finally sort of felt the sigh in the agency. Things are much more, less anxiety about change and more stability. We have this stabilized workforce by, we filled vacancies and we've shored up the organizational structure through such initiatives as the implementation of the Archer study. We totally revamped our entire hiring process. We now post all positions. We have internal hiring committees who assess, interview, score the applicants. We have an emphasis on minority recruitment, and as of today, of all of our new hires, we have a rate of 46% minority, and so we are really trying to keep an eye on diversifying our staff. We appreciate your 2013 approval of allowing us to use existing funds on initiatives such as the Internet Crimes Against Children and the Cold Case DNA Task Force, and also the continuation of those programs in this next biennial cycle. We have the following requests for our 2014-2015 budget allocations. We are requesting a budget adjustment to include existing positions omitted from the base. For two reasons those positions were omitted. When our salary line item was calculated, OBM based the amount on a snapshot of our payroll from this year's pay 18. Because we had 17 employees on unpaid leaves, military leave, sick leave, we had some employees out who were studying for the bar. Our entire array of law clerks were not on that pay as well. Because of those positions being vacant at that snapshot, and we also had 8 vacancies on that payroll snapshot, those positions were eliminated from the base budget. The total amount of those salaries is $843,000. Since pay 18, of the 17 employees on leave, 16 have returned to work. And of the 8 vacancies, we have filled 5. So $550,000 approximately has been reengaged in our office, and we are at least asking for the funding for the 21 of the 25 total positions. So we're at least asking to cover the $550,000 of those positions that are currently filled. We are also requesting resources for employee cost of living adjustments and performance-based merit increases. Although we did recently implement the Archer study, we only gave increases to those employees who were below the minimum amount of the Archer determined pay range. We appreciate the increases for those employees, but the reality is that we are still paying many very experienced, loyal, hardworking, high-performing employees the same amount as we hire new, in some cases less experienced employees. The ability to offer staff a 2% cost of living increase and a performance-based increase would go a long way in retaining and attracting quality staff. Any dollars allocated for merit increases would be based on performance. We've created a quality and comprehensive evaluation tool for the agency and have begun the review process with employees. By December 13, the evaluation process will be complete so that we can use those evaluations as the basis for increases in 2014. This year alone, we lost 10 of 17 assistant county prosecutors to other government agencies and another 3 to private law firms. 5 of the 10 were hired by the U.S. Attorney's Office, whose minimum salary scale is up to 18% higher than our Archer ranges. We train them as prosecutors, and they're often recruited away with higher salaries to agencies such as the U.S. Attorney and the Attorney General. The need to retain quality attorneys through competitive pay is best illustrated in the work performed by our staff. For example, our major trial unit attorneys litigate the most heinous and violent crimes in the county. This unit tries cases involving sexual assaults against children, rapes, and murders. Those cases that you would want to feel secure knowing are assigned to the most experienced and qualified attorneys. If someone in my family or yours were a victim of a heinous crime, we'd all want the attorney with the highest level of experience and skill in the courtroom for us. Yet, our agency has seen a continuous decline in retaining these most experienced prosecutors. In the last 5 years alone, the average years of experience in this unit has gone from 16 years in 2009 down to 10 and a half years in 2013. We need to offer a compensation program whereby employees have incentive to stay at the prosecutor's office so we can have the highest level of skill in the courtrooms. Thank you for your consideration, and we do appreciate your support.
Thank you very much. Who has questions for the prosecutor's office? Councilman Schron.
First, I appreciate you coming before us and telling us where we were in the status of the evaluations, because you knew you were going to ask those questions, and it sounds like you're right on the right track. I'm just actually disappointed the Archer study was that far off of what it sounds to me you're telling us market value is, at least with the U.S. Attorney's Office, 18%. Now, I always expected they're going to be on the higher end of that historically, but you're telling me we're going to have a hard time hiring people. It sounds like we already have a hard time retaining people.
Absolutely,
Why is
we
the
are.
Archer study that far off of market?
Because the Archer study gave us the minimum amount for each pay range, the midpoint, and the high end of the pay range. And they also gave us the market value for attorneys in each of the four categories of attorneys, attorney 1 through 4. We are nowhere near paying our attorneys the market value.
But by way of explanation, I would point out that in each pay grade, the band is 40% wide from the low point to the high point. So if you took the midpoint, it would be about 20% more than a minimum, which would get you pretty close. But what we did in this first stage of pay equity was we only brought people who were below the minimum to the minimum, but we certainly didn't get them anywhere near the midpoint.
And I understand this is a long process, so we're going to get there. This is a budgetary issue we're talking about here. And do you have a sequence that you're going to build into the budget? Do you think that logically, based on the review process and performance, and not everybody's going to be a star performer, as you're going to find out, and some are going to get accelerated at a faster pace. Is that built into your, I see we've got the 2014 and 2015. Is that being built into how you're going to escalate the speed on these reviews?
It is the.
To get to Mr. Miller's comments of where we're going to put these people as where they ultimately belong.
This request doesn't get particularly our attorneys where they belong. It doesn't get them for some of them. Some perhaps may be at what the market value or the midpoint value is of the Archer study. That's a conversation that I believe would be much more expensive for the county council to consider moving forward. What this does, though, is at least it starts us on the program of annual compensation based on performance. And we would follow the structure, or at least the basic infrastructure of how the county implemented their performance bonuses, if you will, this year. So this doesn't get us, like I said, to meet the market value of the Archer study, but what this does do is at least it creates a process for people to have an incentive to stay or be hired.
Was there anybody moved beyond what the Archer study recommended within the prosecutor's office?
There was not.
I understand maybe there was another group that,
No, we did not do
not within the
that.
prosecutor's office,
We
within another group.
heard loud and clear from this body not to go beyond the minimum, and we stayed there, and not every employee as a result got an increase. Some were already at or above the minimum.
But I don't think this body said the minimum. They said, let's have measurable standards and then review where they belong. Step one first was set up an evaluation system so that you can factor in the budgeting. And then from the evaluation system, it was to do the reviews. And then I don't think anybody was resisting saying where to put the people at the right place. It just wasn't do it based on Kentucky windage, basically, on that. It was to have some actual facts and figures, which sounds like we're getting there. At least I don't. This individual here said don't do it on the basis of just the way I think you did it. It did a good job. It was on the basis of actual review process, which now sounds like it's in the place.
Yeah, I did. I've looked at it as a two-step process.
Right.
Bring the folks up to the minimum, and then we would then move forward with performance-based reviews. I will say, though, in fairness, the performance-based reviews that we're going to have, like you said, some folks will get recommended for a certain amount, some may not be recommended
Right.
for any amount. But even for those that are recommended for an increase, the increase in most cases most likely would not get them to the market value or the midpoint.
Okay. And what does it cost, what do you have built in the budget for training purposes? Because every time we lose a trained person, we have to retrain the next person. And do you have a percentage of costs that you're building in for training purposes in this budget?
You know, we do have a training program, and I can get you the cost, I don't know what it
Yeah,
is
I
off the
appreciate
top of
that,
my
because
head.
every time you lose an employee, that's
Right.
thousands of dollars out the window that we have to then recoup but I assume also you have a factor in that you probably are a place that you don't keep people forever, unfortunately. They do go off to the private sector.
We do, and then another downside of that also is when you have more experienced attorneys who are there to also train and foster and mentor the younger attorneys. When the more experienced people, leave, that less experienced, particularly in the attorney sections of our units, that loss of experience is also felt when the younger attorneys are not at the level that they could be because they're learning from the attorneys who've been there for 15 to 25 years. So we do have a comprehensive training program now that was not to the extent that it was put in place prior to this administration. We also have an extensive orientation program now that we spend a lot of time and obviously dollars on, so I think that your point is very well taken.
Yeah, my concern is just, as we sit here today, is the budgeting cost of the Archer study, implementation, review, where we go with that, training, what its costs are in this county. Thank you.
Councilman Gallagher, and then Greenspan.
The prosecutors are not permitted to practice outside, right?
The prosecutors are permitted to practice outside. They are to notify us. They fill out a secondary employment form, and they disclose information about the work that they are doing.
Okay. Which helps out, I would imagine, greatly for them. I saw the Archer study as a first step. And what we are experiencing, this is actually more for the council, I think in this budget in particular is our opportunity to get a grasp on the salaries ranging specifically in our justice partners community, because they aren't equitable, they aren't fair. We have rogues out there. We have hiring halls, and we've got to get a line on this. And your openness, Ms. McGinney's openness to do the Archer study, where we've had others somewhat resistant, it goes a long way in our argument to get a handle on equitable pay for everybody in the county. As a previous county worker, I know how important it is to you personally and to raising a family and paying your bills. And when you are in one little segment of the justice community getting nothing for 5 years, and people across the street getting 3%, 2%, 3%, 1%, it creates a problem, not just with the people that are getting a raise and those that aren't. It makes that gap greater that we're going to have to somehow fill in. So we've really got to get a handle on this, and we've got to do it now, or it's never going to get done. The last budget we passed, we were new, and I watched very closely on how some people acted with that budget, and they didn't act outside the budget, but they weren't equitable. And I think in some instances, they took great advantage of the fact that they, quote unquote, found money or quote unquote, saved money. And then all of a sudden that money was dispersed equally amongst their employees. It's an incredibly unjust performance on their part. I didn't agree with it. There was nothing to say they couldn't do it, but we have to stop that process. So I think we need to get together before we submit this budget to in some way, and it's going to be difficult, and it's not going to be, this will be step 2, and it'll probably 20 steps, but we have to send the message to everybody in the county that their performance as an employee is equally important to all of us, because we're all in this together, and I still don't get that sense that we are all together in this. And it starts really with pay, because that's the thing that brings everybody together. So I greatly appreciate what you did. I hear what you're saying. I think we need to adjust that in the second step as we adjust everybody in the second step. So, Mr. President, I will be meeting with you and anybody else that might want to discuss this. I think we're going to have to come up with some formula, at least for the next 2 years, that makes some sort of sense as we move forward. And I know it'll be somewhat costly in some areas and not so costly in others, but having seen some people, and it could be considered taking advantage of the process that the last budget, we have to stop that. That has to stop. And you are the perfect example of what we were looking at as far as an organization within the county to become a partner with everyone. So you're really the example that I'm looking at to move forward for the rest of the county as far as pay equity is concerned. And I think, and you had a 800,000 savings.
Yes, our surplus, I did mention that we have a surplus this year. The surplus is approximately $800,000. And that is, we spent some of the money that we had not prior used when you allowed us to hire the persons for the COTW DNA process and such. So the $800,000 is what's left still, even though we spent some of the other dollars that you allowed us to do. So $800,000 ultimately is what we have.
And
in surplus.
you had spoken with me and had mentioned that there was a potential use for that we had discussed. You want to discuss that now?
Sorry?
That potential use for that, what was your thought?
I propose that the surplus that we have in our agency be used for a one-time project, which would be to pay for what it would cost to get the interface created between the ProAir system and in the courts and in the clerk of court's office, and then our office with Justice Matters. My understanding from the quote that I saw, I don't have it in front of me, from ProAir was that interface would cost somewhere about $400,000 to $430,000, if I'm remembering correctly. I would suggest that it would be a good investment to spend the dollars that we have in excess for this year, because even if your process with the RFP to get the systems all under one umbrella, best case scenario, as you and I talked about, takes 3 years to put the RFP out, choose a vendor, get the contract done, and implement the system, that period of time would be well worth the money spent interfacing the systems now.
And again, for the council, within the Safety and Justice Affairs Committee, we've been working on trying to get all of the county partners in the legal community under one umbrella. We have a scattering of companies and systems, and it's just it's really a tangled mess, and we're trying to untangle that. And Mr. Mowry is in the process. We're going to meet with the Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice, who was previously, Moyer was working on it, and the new Chief Justice has shown an interest. We're going to meet with her. We're going to be meeting with all the players in the system. The RFP is hopefully scheduled to go out this year. We're going to be sharing that as we move along. I would suggest that while that probably is a good idea, and I understand that right now we can include that with an asterisk that we talk to Mr. Mowry and find out the implementation after the RFP and what our timeline would be, and is it in good stead to use that $800,000 now to do that project, or if the timeline is less, maybe that money is better spent going towards the umbrella project that we're looking at, which I think is going to be a reality, within the next 3 to 5 years. But if it's a 5-year project, then the $800,000 obviously is important to move now with what your request is. But if it's a 3 or less, I think we need to discuss that, and because once that umbrella is up, the costs are going to start coming down. And over a 10-year period, the savings, I can't imagine the savings to be anything but spectacular. So what I'm saying is let's talk to Mr. Mowry about that and leave it as the 800,000 going towards the purpose that you're requesting right now. We'll talk with them on that.
Great, I appreciate the
But thank,
consideration.
and the full council will be bringing you into this. This is probably one of the biggest projects that this council will be tackling, believe it or not, bringing we're trying to present ourselves as regionalists throughout our districts, and we can't even get regionalism within the county itself. So we have to, we have to show everybody we can do it here, and it certainly is possible, and I appreciate your help, and the other courts have participated, and we appreciate their help. Thank you.
Ms. Platten, did I hear correctly you estimated the cost of the temporary interface project is 400,000 out of the 800,000?
That's correct. It's somewhere between 400 and 430,000 if my memory serves me.
Okay. Councilman Greenspan. And then Germana.
Great, thank you. I'm a little confused and trying to understand how the MOU is supposed to help in some operational factors. My understanding is the MOU, now some of the prosecutor responsibilities were shifted over to the law director, but I'm not seeing a reduction in cost in the prosecutor's office. So how is that working?
The memorandum of understanding did not have an operational impact on our office as of today for a couple different reasons. First, we didn't transfer any cases to the law department. The agreement that we have with Majid is that we kept the cases that we currently were immersed in. Many of them, some of them we were litigating already for years. And so we didn't lose any cases to date. We were partnering on a few of them, big ones, particularly relative to transactional cases. We also have re-engaged those clients that remain in our civil division and have gone out and reintroduced ourselves and have stuck our hand out to say, we're here to help you. We're here to help you on legal issues. We would like to provide guidance, whatever it is that you need. That, I don't believe, had been done in a long time. And we've gotten quite an overwhelmingly positive response. For example, Metro Health. Metro Health asked us to write a legal opinion on their domestic partners issue, and we did that. And then from there, they asked us to come out and talk about our subpoena process. And from there, they asked us to consider assisting them on other legal opinions. So where we were not engaged with Metro Health on a civil division level, we are very engaged with Metro Health now. We're not taking over their legal items, but we are giving them some help. Soil and Water came to us and said, we need your help. And we haven't done legal work for Soil and Water for years. We now have a civil attorney assigned to the Mental Health Board who didn't have an attorney and didn't use the prosecutor's office in recent past. So we're re-engaging with those agencies, and we're continuing to take in additional cases from the remaining organizations that we did keep from the MOU.
So as you're re-engaging with these other agencies, are we at least recouping our costs? We charging them?
We do not charge the other agencies.
Can we?
I don't know, do we have a chargeback? Yeah, I'm sorry, we do have a chargeback process with the other agencies, yes.
So then shouldn't we, if that was the case, shouldn't we expect to see a decrease in budget costs? Because if you're charging for services by re-engaging with entities you weren't engaged with previously, or it's been a while, why would we not see those costs, that revenue coming in to offset the cost if you're not reducing your overhead, the head count, I mean?
That revenue was coming in already, though. For those agencies that we retained within the MOU, I'd have to ask Marvin to help me out here if there's.
Marvin Davies, Finance and Operations. So if someone was working 20% for the Board of Election, we would get 20, there would be a chargeback or indirect cost allocated for their time. Now they may be doing 15% with Board of Elections and 5%. So there wasn't a net increase that we can see, but I'd be glad to look into it further to investigate it.
But I thought we heard soil and water as an example. We weren't doing work with them or Metro Health until recently. Are we not able to charge that back?
I would want to confirm that they weren't on a schedule. They may have been paying for it and not receiving the services. So I'd like to at least have a chance to look at it to confirm that soil and water wasn't a part of the allocation prior to now.
Boy, that's an interesting can of worms that statement might have just opened. So maybe there was an understanding on my part that the MOU in the aggregate was going to save the county money. But I guess what I'm hearing is, because the law department's coming back asking for additional headcount, you're not reducing your headcount. So I guess there is no savings. There actually may be more costly for us to have entered into the MOU.
Well, we, like I said, we haven't seen a decrease yet, particularly because our caseload hasn't changed. We also have, for example, one of our attorneys is highly respected in transactional litigation and transactional contracting. He has been assisting the law department in the past. He's now he's a supervisor in our division. He spends a lot of time working on, for example, the hotel issue. So we're sharing resources still. We're not cutting our budget. We're not cutting our staff. We haven't seen that
Because
yet.
I thought a lot of discussion around the MOU was how there was going to be a shift in personnel. I believe that was one of the big concerns from the prosecutor's office, was shifting the personnel from one department to another, or from the prosecutor to the law director. And now I'm hearing there's no shift in personnel because the caseload has not decreased, but the law department's workload has, which means in the aggregate from the taxpayer's perspective, we may be paying more having entered into the MOU than by not entering into the MOU.
At the very least, it's stayed stagnant.
On your part, I mean, on your side, but the law director hires
Yeah,
people.
I don't know anything really
know.
about what his operations and his budget are, so I think,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's right. Let me ask
Don't wanna
another question
comment on
just
that.
about this first comment about the existing, the folks that were omitted from the budget. And I understand that the fiscal offices or the OBM took a snapshot at a particular payroll, and there were people off for various reasons, but were still employed with the county, just not drawing payroll at that time. And that was the number that was used to continue the budget forward, which would amount in the reduction of a number of your staff, which are either were on leave or you've now filled those positions. Before the budget was submitted, I guess, to council, did the prosecutor see the budget in advance, have an opportunity to comment, to note, hey, we're missing these people?
Yes, we did. We had that opportunity, and we took the opportunity, number one, with OBM, and number two, with the administration. And the response was basically, agencies are not funded at 100% because of the in and out and vacancies throughout a year. We asked them to correct the budget base before it got submitted to you to include those positions, at least the positions where I knew I had people coming back into them. So they did tell us that they would review the process, or I'm sorry, review the budget at mid-year next year. We were not prohibited from obviously allowing those employees to come back or hiring for the vacancies, but that we were going to have to come before you and request the money for the existing positions we have.
But those people are working today, and there's no money in the budget for them.
21,
January 1.
correct, 21 of the 25 positions have people in them working today.
And they may be funded through 2013, but come January 1, 2014, you're
I'm
going to be over
looking at-
budget.
Yes, right now I'm looking at a $546,000 deficit for that year because I have people in those positions that I do not have funding for.
And is that 546 on a fully loaded basis, PERS benefits? Is that,
That's just salaries.
okay, can you get that number of the fully loaded number for those employees? It seems bizarre that,
Could I ask a question on that point? I'm wondering how that 546 number relates to the annual cost of $518,532 that's in the request listed in the budget book.
I'm just trying to get to where you're looking at.
That's on page 4-33 of the budget book.
I don't have.
The 518 is 100%. What Ms. Platten is alluding to is a portion of the 518 have people are actually in those positions. So if you take the number in the 518, I think it's 323,000. It's just a portion. So it's a portion of ask number 1 and a portion of ask number 2 that are currently field positions.
I'm sorry, but that's just not clear. Let me try this another way. Is what you're asking for in addition, something in addition to the 518?
No.
It's the same.
Yes.
Well, why are we getting two different numbers?
We'd like the 842, which is the total, but we're saying at least give us what we have presently filled. We have 21 of the 25 positions with people currently in them. The 842,000 represents all 25 positions.
And is the number 518, or is it 546, or is it some higher number because you don't have salaries and benefits, you don't have benefits included?
The 518 is the total. What we're asking for is 274,000 of that, 5 of the 8 vacant APAs, and 16 of the 17 that were on leave. So it's the 273 plus 272. That's the 546 that we're asking for.
Okay. Councilman Greenspan.
Yeah, whatever the number is, there's some still, just get us the number. It's interesting to me, though, that you've got head count that effectively, if this budget was to pass as is, you would have to terminate them January 1 because they're not funded in the budget, correct? There's no money for them.
The instruction, again, was to,
I know, come back before us next
Yes.
year. I understand,
but
but that, I know.
that's why we're here, because I felt uncomfortable going in knowing I had these folks on payroll with no dollars to cover them.
And you did bring it forward, and I appreciate, you brought it to the administration. Their direction was to bring it up next year, so we'd have unfunded employees starting, employed January 1, that were here 12/31, and we'll take that under consideration.
Director Parks.
Oh, yeah, I just want to clarify the approach. Even though we look at a moment in time, there tends to be a rolling vacancy, and what we do is an allowance based on trends that show how often those positions are available. So if we look at it again in mid-year and we see that those vacancies do not exist or are not continuing, then that would be a point where we would look at additional funding. But historically, for most agencies, they have vacancies that stay vacant because of turnover, and they're normally not funded at 100% because those vacancies remain. So it's not that we looked at the vacancy and said we're not funding it. We looked at a trend, and that's how that number was developed.
So, Ms. Platten, do you have 21 vacancies right now?
We do have, we don't have 21. It's, I don't know what the number is, but it's not 21.
So the bottom line.
We do have vacancies. I understand that thinking.
Right, right, and there's an appropriate thought process to reducing to vacancies and leave a few vacancies, and I understand that, but you specifically have 21 people who are not funded January 1.
I do.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilman Jemana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask a question, and I don't really expect an answer today, okay? Because, this is a budget hearing, this should be towards budget, but a question came up in my mind in reading the presentation, and this has to do with highest performers getting a merit increase. I know doctors, hospitals, they have performance rates based on outcomes, and then what's not fair is some hospitals, doctors take harder cases and so on. So, possibly in the Justice Affairs, Public Safety and Justice Affairs, if we could hear in the future, with that in mind, you know, there's been things talking about how the prosecutor either charges lower, charges higher to get better outcomes and so on. I'm just wondering, later on, not today, but I'd be interested in knowing how you rate a higher performer. What makes a prosecutor a higher performer? Certainly can't be his batting average if he's taking tougher cases and so on. That is what I wanted to see if we could have some explanation later down the line.
Yes,
Could you get us some information on that?
I can do that. I'll
Okay.
provide benchmarks and performance measures for our attorneys and our support staff.
Yes. Councilman Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't be long. I just want to say that while I know it's absolutely necessary that the kind of questions that have been asked are asked, so these are budget hearings, that the process that the Councilman Gallagher is, you know, helping the council, leading the council with is, I think, you know, the big picture, and that we should keep this big picture in mind. As someone who's been around a little while, you know, we're in an evolving process from the kind of county government that we had in the past, and a lot has occurred in the last 3 years. But it's amazing in some ways that a culture that had existed for many decades, and I'm not even passing judgment on it because it was considered normal by the people who held office, many honorable people, many good employees, but things have changed, and the fiefdoms that we lived with for many years, and the patronage that we lived with for many years, the competition, the absolute inequity across the county in terms of who was paid what for what in the different elected positions is something that we've been working our way through for the last 3 years, and I think we've come a long way, and we've still got a long way to go. But it should be remembered, you know, that it was only, 10 years ago that this was a completely different situation, and so it's not going to change. It's not going to change overnight. And there's a political culture that has existed in this county, not so different than many other counties in the country. And just because there were a few bad players that are now well known, I think maybe still sharing space with us as we sit here today. There were many the culture was very different, and in the prosecutor's office, the culture as well. In the sheriff's office, I could go on, was very different, and was highly politicized as a part of a tradition, and not just, I'm not just talking about one prosecutor or another prosecutor or a third prosecutor, but a whole, many decades of how the office was seen as a political springboard for many people, and how people were expected by the broader community, or pretty much the political community, that people who worked in the prosecutor's office would work there a short amount of time, and then they would go on to become a judge, or they would go on to do something in the private sector, but they weren't expected. They weren't even, seen as successful themselves if they didn't move on. And so this was part of the culture that we've lived with. And what I'm trying to say is that I appreciate the fact that we're moving toward a much more professional culture in the county in general, and in the prosecutor's office as well, and that it's a very important activity. It's a very important position. The prosecutor's office is very essential to a county this size, and it's important that we be able to retain good people and begin to change that that view of what being a county employee is, much less being, and that also includes the prosecutor's office.
Mr. President,
Yes.
Councilman Brady, if I could answer that question or react to it. I really appreciate your noticing, and I know council has noticed and others. We have taken a regional and business approach to this county and the criminal justice system, and it's not political anymore. The politics are not an issue in the decision-making factor or hiring. We've set up a committee process. We're bringing the best possible people, recruiting across the country to get these best possible people. There's no accusation or feeling that the decisions have a political factor to them anymore. We are aiming for career prosecutors, which will protect the public safety. And we are looking to keep people, retain them, and they're very enjoyable, hardworking jobs, and the public will be the beneficiary. As you have taken a regional approach, as this government, this new government has made us look at the whole county at once together. We're on the same boat together. We're looking at it that way, and we're bringing in these criminal justice agencies to come out of their regional fiefdoms and work on it together. And as we collect these performance analysis and these statistics and what areas are performing and what aren't, we're making adjustments. We are acting where everything was secretive. We're being open. We're changing our culture as you are changing the culture of this, of the regional government. And I think the proof will be in the pudding. The crime rate's going to continue to fall, and we'll take responsibility if it goes up, and we'll make the adjustments that are necessary. So thanks for noticing. Appreciate it.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes the budget portion of our meeting today. And I am in distress over that how long Jeff Applebaum has been sitting here, because I know what we pay him. So if there's no objection, I would like to, for the time being, skip over the Welcome House and move on to the items related to the hotel project. And Ms. Clerk, if you could please read Resolution 2013-0234.
I would gladly do that, Mr. Chairman. And just as an aside, once I read this into the record, I will be deferring my clerk duties to the deputy clerk so that I can go and finish the November 11th agenda.
Okay. Thank you for helping us this morning.
You're welcome. Resolution number 2013-0234, a resolution making an award on requisition number 28353 to Turner Ozanne VAA, a joint venture for the Convention Center Hotel project, authorizing the county executive to negotiate, enter into, and execute an initial contract with Turner Ozanne VAA, a joint venture, in the amount not to exceed $10 million for the period November 13, 2013 through September 1, 2016, and to execute all other documents consistent with said award and this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call Director Teeuwen forward to make any presentation and call upon the assistance of any experts at her discretion.
Thank you, Bonnie Teeuwen, Director of Public Works. I will forfeit my time to Jeff Applebaum.
Okay, fine.
Clock starts now.
Notice how you didn't even react to that.
It's on the, excuse me, is it? It's on the desktop. Okay.
And could you send us I'm sure we have it already, so if you could send it out to everybody so we have the electronic version. Thank you. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. And one thing you will learn is I'm on a fixed fee, so no matter how many hours I spend, you get it at the time. So there are actually multiple.
We still know how valuable your
I-
time is,
and I do
regardless.
appreciate that. Thank you. There are actually several resolutions. That's the first one. There's 4 that you're looking at today, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to address the overall project and how each of these fit in. So I don't know if you need to read the rest of them before I start or how you want to do that. Is that necessary, or can I just launch into this?
It probably wouldn't be a bad idea. So we'll ask Nikki as soon as she's.
In the meantime, I'm piquing your curiosity because what's on the screen, while we're not going to do the design presentation until next Tuesday, what is on the screen right now is that little red image could be something about the mass and the height of the hotel, and you can see it by comparison to the other tall buildings in Northeast Ohio, so you'll have an idea of where it stands, so to speak.
Okay, our interest has been piqued. I'm going to call upon Miss Nikki, if you could read 236, 237, and 240, and we'll get them all into the record and on the agenda at the same time.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Resolution number 2013-0236, a resolution authorizing a contract with project management consultants in the amount not to exceed $4,150,000 for owner's representative services in connection with the Convention Center Hotel project for the period November 1, 2013 through September 1, 2016, authorizing the county executive to execute the contract and all other documents consistent with this resolution, and declaring a necessity that this resolution become immediately effective. Resolution number 2013-0237, a resolution authorizing a final definitive contract with Cooper Carey Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $6,500,000 for criteria architectural services for the Convention Center Hotel project for the period August 13, 2013 through September 1, 2016, authorizing the county executive to execute the contract and all other documents consistent with this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective. And resolution number 2013-0240, a resolution authorizing retention of the law firm of Thompson Hine as legal counsel in connection with the Convention Center Hotel project in the amount not to exceed $880,000 for the period November 1, 2013 through September 1, 2016, authorizing the Director of Law to execute the engagement letter and all other documents consistent with this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Are we in need of having each of these resolutions passed to council at the November 12th meeting?
We're in need of having the Turner and Cooper Carey's passed. I would appreciate having the contracts for PMC and Thompson Hine passed because my partners would appreciate that. But the answer is yes. I mean, we're all been working very hard and continue to work hard. So the answer is yes.
Okay, they're on a short time frame.
Yes.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now, and I know that it's late in the day, so I'm going to go quickly through this, but I wanted to do a few things in this presentation because although to some degree you understand how these contracts relate to building the hotel, you have challenged me on several occasions to go back and give you more and more information about the project itself. So as I go through this, I want to do the following things. First of all, I'm just going to very briefly tell you where we are in the program and schedule update, a little bit of status. I want to give you the Hilton deal overview. There's nothing for you to vote on Hilton right now, but we are at a point in time where I can overview the deal for you because obviously, as you talk about you approve the contracts to build, you want to understand the ultimate deal when we build. So I'm going to go through that quickly. Then I will just go through some of the high points of the four contracts that we're talking about. So to begin with, Once again, I'm going to go back to the hotel program. You've seen this before. There's a little bit more definition here. We now do know, and you'll see this on Tuesday, that on the second line, we are looking at a building that is 31 stories high. In other words, you have the 4-story podium, and then you're going to have 27 stories above that, which is the hotel. You see a lot of the elements of this. I'm not going to bother to go through this right now, but we are scheduled on Tuesday at your council meeting to have the first public presentation of schematic design. We have been working through diligently the last several days. Some of you have come to a few of those meetings, and you know how many people are involved and how hard we're working to confirm the program, the design, to get our cost within budget. A couple large variables are at the bottom. You'll hear more about these later. One is we're still working through the foundation system, and the other one is we are considering parking underneath the building. And there's a big question as to what we do with parking. We have a solution with parking under the building. That it is expensive to put parking under the building. We're actually looking at some alternate possibilities, and we'll talk more about that when we talk through design options on Tuesday. But we're considering all aspects of the project. It's going extremely well. And once again, and will be for your record, you'll have this. The last time I was here, I showed you, this is just on the project design. This is more detail in development on project design, just to show you where we are right now in the immediate future. You see, this is November 7th, today's meeting. Literally this week, we've completed schematic design. We'll present the schematic design to you on November 12th. You can then see there's a series of things that we're doing. I will point out on November 20th, we're going to have our second public outreach meeting of the project, and you can see some of the other elements here. What is in green are points at time which we come back to council with formal presentations on design. Now, there's other things council will look at also, such as the cooperative agreement, but this is related to design. Those are times we'll be back to council on design. And this is just, once again, some of the critical milestone dates on the project. So in terms of the team, and you've seen this before, the contracts we're talking about today, I'll tell you about where we are with Hilton as the operator, and then the critical players here, the design build team contract, the Cooper Carry contract, the owner's representative contract. These are the players that you have along with Hilton. These are your stakeholders that are building the project. So those are the contracts that we'll go through today. So now I want to talk about Hilton and where we are. The process of getting a deal done with Hilton is twofold. First of all, after we made the selection, we were involved heavily in the negotiation of a term sheet, which sets forth the terms and conditions of a proposed deal. Once again, at the end of the day, we have a term sheet. We get the administration support on the term sheet, and then ultimately it converts to a deal that we present to you for approval. But I wanted to, right now, give you an update on some of the key terms and conditions so you can understand where the deal is going. We do have a fully negotiated term sheet. It's been signed by Hilton. It will be over at the county executive today for consideration and signature. Now, once again, even if the term sheet is signed, the term sheet is still conditioned on getting to the final definitive deal, which is the second part, which is the qualified management agreement, which has to be presented to and signed by council. Until the qualified management agreement is signed by council, Hilton is working at risk. They understand that. They're taking time and effort. They're helping us with technical services. But rather than sign a short form agreement for some of those technical services, they've agreed to wait until the overall program is set forward. So they're working at their risk right now, going through the process of development of program and design with us. With the execution of the term sheet, we now commence preparing what is a very sophisticated agreement. It's called a QMA, a Qualified Management Agreement. It is a highly complex document because of the IRS regulations that are involved because of the nature of the financing we're contemplating. We believe that that document, the first drafts, are in the process of preparation now. We believe that we'll be negotiating that throughout November and December. We believe that we'll have negotiations concluded at the end of the year, and we'll be in a position to make presentations to council shortly after the first of the year. So we'll be scheduling a time to do that. Having said that, though, just like I'm doing today, I think in the spirit of transparency, we'll tell you where the terms and conditions are, and we'll tell you a lot about it as we go along. Right now, I'm going to tell you about some of the essential deal points in the term sheet with Hilton. First of all, the initial term is a 15-year term. It's renewable. The fee structure, there's a fee structure, and I'm going to show you actually one typical year pro forma in a minute. Essentially what happens is Hilton starts out with a base management fee in the first year. It's about $639,000. That management fee grows until year 5. In year 5, it's about $1.2 million, and then it freezes. And then it's simply subject to a CPI sort of growth. It's only based on that, no other scaled increase from year 5 on. There is also a subordinate incentive or management fee. And this is the fee that they get. The subordinate fee, they only get if certain things happen. And that fee is 0 in the first 2 years. In the third year, it's $267,000. And in the 5th year, it grows to $616,000, and then that's frozen. So the total possible fee is about $1.8 million, but they only earn the incentive management fee if a series of things occur. Number 1, if we have the money to pay it. Number 2, if in fact the success of the hotel meets a standard. So we set a standard, which is basically, it's called a RevPAR index, and it's really a combination of looking at revenue and occupancy. And we look at a competitive set of hotels that we're negotiating. What are the hotels we're competing with? And if they do not get to 95% of that standard, they do not get this additional subordinate fee. So they're at risk for that. And also, they only get the fee if we get our priority payment first. In other words, the money that we have to take out for debt service, that comes out first. They can earn the fee because they have good performance, but they don't get the fee unless we have enough money to pay the fee. So those are all conditions on how that subordinate fee works. Our priority payment will grow in year 3. It ramps up. In year 3, we take $8 million out of this deal. In year 4, we get to $9 million, and then from thereafter, our priority payment is $9 million, and that's what we get out of the deal to pay for debt service. And that is part of the model that we have built in terms of our financing model. And like I say, they don't get their subordinate fee until and unless we get our priority payment. There's going to be a room block agreement. We've talked about this before. This is an agreement that says that they have to reserve a certain number of rooms for our convention center so many years in advance. And that is a standard, and it'll be a large block, so the more years you're out, the larger the block, then the block is reduced over time. So we have first cut through the convention center of buying these large blocks of rooms. That's one of the critical reasons that we're doing this. There's a right of termination if, in fact, their RevPAR falls beneath 95% of this competitive set for a 2-year period, and there's a failure to cure. We do have a termination right. We have negotiated with them a financial contribution. We want them to put upfront money into the deal. We want them to put equity into the deal. I'm not yet going to publicly reveal what the key money is, because it's going to be part of the overall financing that we get to. I will tell you it is a significant amount of money. It's a 7-figure amount of money. It is significant. It was highly negotiated, and I'll be telling you about that soon. But we do have a significant upfront payment that Hilton puts into the deal, which demonstrates their belief in the product. They wouldn't be doing this if they didn't. They wouldn't put money at risk if they didn't believe in this deal. So let me show you some pro forma assumptions. We have a pro forma. Now, it's a very detailed pro forma. I'm not going to put the whole thing up for you because it's a massive spreadsheet. I'll of course, provide it to you to look at. So the pro forma starts in 2016. We're assuming, once again, 600 rooms. That we have more bays because we have suites, but 600 individual rooms to be sold. We are assuming that we start out in 2016, and we ramp up. So we're only assuming 50%. These are conservative assumptions. We think we'll do better than this. But we're assuming, for the purpose of the pro forma, 50% occupancy in 2016. And we're assuming that 2 years from now, the average day, actually 2.5 years from now, the average daily rate is $150 a room. I actually believe that the rate will be higher than that. I think the market will command more, but once again, this is very conservative. It then assumes that we ramp up. The number of rooms stays the same. Ultimately, by 2020, we have a stabilized rate of 70% occupancy. By the way, right now in Cleveland, downtown, we have 71% occupancy. So this is a conservative assumption, and we then assume it never gets better than that. If it does get better than that, we make more money, but these are conservative assumptions. We're assuming that by 2020, the average daily rate is $182 a room. And at that point in time, for purposes of our pro forma, because we can't look ahead, we then assume that future daily rate from 2020 on grows at no more than 2.5% a year. Very conservative, once again, from what we've seen. So now, let me take you through this. I've taken a year, and this is a stabilized year. We ramp up to 1919. 2020 is a stabilized year. Our first stabilized year is 2019, 3 years after we start. In the fourth year, this is a stabilized year. Now, there's a lot of detail behind this, but basically what you would see, and let me first of all tell you, Hilton, this is Hilton's pro forma. This is more conservative than PKF, the outside consultant that was used. This is more conservative than other hotel pro formas. Hilton has a record of nailing these pro formas. They have a record time after time after time of producing convention hotels that meet or exceed their pro formas. So they're very conservative in them, but on the other hand, their record of hitting these numbers is extraordinarily good. So this is how it would work. In the first in 2020, the total revenue brought in by that hotel would be around $41 million. This is from all sources: rooms, food and beverage, whatever the revenue source is in the hotel. Then, obviously, out of that, you take all of the expenses for everything that you have to do in the hotel. All your employees, all your contract services, your overhead expenses of all types. When you get rid of all the expenses, the direct expenses to do everything, it leaves you with $15.4 million, almost $15.5 million. You then apply the Hilton base fee at this point in time, and I picked this year because this is when they get their maximum fee, $1.2 million, and assuming that they have enough revenue, which they do under the pro forma, they get their incentive fee. So you take their fees out, and that leaves really, before some fixed charges, that leaves $13.6 million. You take out property tax. Now keep in mind that we are paying property tax, but we're actually, part of it is property tax goes to schools, so some of this money is going to support schools in Cuyahoga County. Some of it is part of a TIF, but we do make the payment, and this is money that goes, more than half of this goes to the schools. There's some insurance. You take those out, then we get to, in EBITDA, we get to basically $11,386,000. This is really, in essence, in some ways, this is actually the county's money now. We use it for three purposes. First of all, we take out money, which is our reserve, really our capital repair replacement fund. So we take out $1.2 million. That is money that, it's the county-owned building. This is money that we'll put back in to improve the building. Every year we put capital reserve funds back in. With the capital reserve fund out, we have net operating income of $10,155,000. By the way I've done this, the green is kind of the county's money, if you will. We then take $9 million out. That's our debt service. Now, I've never talked about this. I've never talked about the county making money. because I've always said, what our purpose is, but in all honesty, if you look at the pro forma in 2020, with this conservative pro forma, the county actually will make $1,155,000. That's the remainder, which is county money. It is true that if you go through the pro forma, after we pay for debt service, after we put in a healthy replacement fund from the stabilized year until the end of the term, and it varies year by year because we have some variation in how much we take out for replacement reserve, because in some years we figure it's 7 years we got to replace this, it's 10 years we have to replace that. But as a general proposition, we're making, our remainder is between $1 and $2 million a year throughout this period. My position has been conservatively, we're not counting on it. It's not why we're building the hotel. We're building the hotel. We want it completely paid for. We want to bring all this revenue in. We want to activate the convention center. But yeah, the pro forma shows us making money. And by the way, that's very conservative. It's very possible that we'll do better if we have rates that are higher than that 150, if we have occupancy greater than 70%, if we have really good food and beverage, it can be higher. This is a conservative pro forma. So now, once again, this is in my effort to just keep you updated of where we are. You're not, at this point in time, these are terms that are in a term sheet. There's obviously a lot of other terms. We're happy to we'll share with you the term sheet. The only thing in the term sheet that frankly I'm not comfortable with releasing quite yet is the key money, because that's part of something else that's going on with that you'll hear about shortly. But that information is available, and the term sheet will be signed. And as we go through the QMA, we'll have other sessions where I'll give you more and more information. But that's kind of an overview. So what are the contracts that we need now in order to move forward? First of all, we have the design-build agreement. And this, of course, is the contract with Turner and their associate with Ozanna and Van Auken and Akins. It's a design-build agreement. It is a contract that will set forth their obligation to, as you recall, we have a criteria architect, the design builder with their architect of record. Based on that criteria design, they give a guaranteed maximum price. They develop the working drawings, they build, and they take full risk on getting the project done within the budget, or within actually the contract price, on time. And it is the same structure, the same type of contract we used on the convention center. So right now, the contract right now establishes various things for the entire scope of the work. Our contract right now establishes the fee that they will get for the entire project. It'll establish the way they'll be paid for their general conditions, which is their staff costs and all their other costs. It establishes how their contingency will operate. It establishes the wrap-up insurance program and the means and methods by which the contract will run. I'll tell you a couple things right now that will be of interest. We have negotiated a fee of 2.1% of the construction cost is their fee. This is their profit and overhead they'll make on the project. Now let me tell you, this will be converted to a fixed number once we get to the GMP. So right now it's a percentage of a number. It will be converted to a fixed number. By way of example, and this is of the construction cost itself. If, for example, when we get to the GMP, the construction cost itself is $180 million, or 185, that's the range of where it will be. This will be 2.1% of that number fixed, and it doesn't grow. By way of comparison, and keep in mind, on the convention center, my group, we prepared the contracts. We put this method together for MMPI. We did not negotiate the business terms. On that project, the fee, the design-build contract, was 2.8% of construction cost. So here we are getting an extraordinarily competitive fee. Normally you'd think that as the building, because this is a smaller dollar value overall and it's a more complex building, the fee would go up. Turner is being extraordinarily competitive. The fee has come down. So it's actually an extraordinary fee for a design-build project of this type. The general conditions are actual costs based on a detailed staff chart. So we have every person lined up, what their job is. We know what their salary is, what their markup, what their benefits are. There's no markup there, so it's the actual staff that will be on the project. Contingency. At the time of the GMP, their contingency will start out at 6% of construction costs, but it declines. With each critical, as soon as they buy out the project, it'll decline. As soon as we get enclosure, it will decline. As soon as they're out of the ground, it'll decline. Enclosure, it'll decline. So it goes, and there's a scale from 6% to 1%. And every time it declines, if they haven't used some of those dollars, if they don't have claims or issues to use them, we get the money back. By the way, we get money back for buyout savings. Why do we do this? Most contracts say there's a set contingency. At the end of the day, you split it. Our deal is, as it declines, we take the money back and we use it in real time for those things that we want to add into the project. I think I've described this method to you folks before. We used this method on the Medical Mart. We got $2 million back in real time. The whole mezzanine office level there was an ad alternate that we used this method. So that's how that works. This contract establishes the architect of record fee. Given the time here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It sets forth a transparent, competitive process for award of all subcontracts. So what happens is all of the work is actually done by the various trade contractors. There are pre-qualified lists that we obtain from Turner. We take those lists and we vet them. Now, I will tell you, we've already taken the initial lists. We're already working with the IG's office to say, are any of these contractors problems? We've heard back, I think just today, from the IG's office. They've done their first review. And we know the ones that are acceptable. We know those that there's a question mark about. So we're working through that with the IG's office. Once we have the vetted list for every contract, the design builder will go out and they have to have a minimum, and they'll have more than this, by the way. They have to obtain a minimum of 3 sealed bids or proposals. Sometimes it's a hard money bid, sometimes it's a proposal, depends on the scope. And those are opened in our presence. So we attend, the county is in the room to make sure it's a fair process. And then there's award made on a best value basis. So this is the same process we used on the Medical Mart and Convention Center. Public reporting of all contracts and pricing, and we'll do sort of the same sorts of things we did before, which is have it up on a website, transparent contracts, transparent dollars, we'll do all that. Their preliminary scope of work right now is not to exceed $10 million. There's pre-construction services, and you'll see a schedule of this on the contract. Pre-construction services are in the $600,000 plus range, preliminary design services, and then there's these 3 initial bid packages that we're doing right away. The asbestos abatement, demolition, and mass excavation, sheeting, and shoring. And that will have a dollar value. It's dependent on what these bids are, but it'll be less than $10 million in total. And we have a schedule where we think those will turn up. They're not authorized to go beyond that until we get to a second agreement, which is a GMP amendment. And that you will approve of, or you'll decide if you'll approve of it after the first of the year. That'll be actually in the March timeframe next year when we have the remainder of the GMP. That number, by the way, just so you'll know, because I've been asked the question, what will the total contract be? What will the total GMP be for design build? It will be a number just north of $200 million. So it will be, I'm not going to say how far north, because a lot of it depends on some of the elements of the project, but will be $200+ million is what the total contract will ultimately be to design build. Just keep in mind, there's a lot of money that's not in this contract. There's a lot of money for all the procurement we do is not in this contract for all the furniture's fixture and equipment, owner-supplied materials, dishes, plates, everything that goes in that hotel. There's a lot of things that aren't in this contract, but for the base construction, it'll be, and the design build service, it'll be something over $200 million. Inclusion. I want to talk about this. We've spent a lot of time in the last few weeks working on inclusion. Councilman Jones may want to comment on this. He attended some of our meetings, and he's been part of our development process here. I'm going to show you, well, this is what you've known. You've known we have a 25% SBE goal. I can tell you that we have developed with Turner, 2 voluntary goals. There's going to be a 15% voluntary MBE goal and a 7% voluntary FBE goal. So this will be the first time that the county has a project where these goals exist. Now, they exist voluntarily, but we will monitor them, we will report on them, and so these will become real in the project. Workforce goals, 40% county resident, 20% city resident, the same as the convention center, and there's a 4% low income goal, which is also something that we'll be doing for the first time. The county will be doing this the first time. We're in the process right now of developing a very aggressive outreach program. It's going to commence immediately. Just because of the lateness of the hour, I'm not going to go into the program, but I think in a separate session we can go through that. I know we've seen the preview of that program. We've had the preliminary program presentation. We are, I believe, and we have to confirm this, but we are looking to do an RFQ for an outreach consultant who will work with us on this, just as we did on the convention center project. And we're in a monitoring methodology is under development right now. One thing which is a little bit different about this project than the convention center is we're not one step removed from this process. So we have resources in the county that participate in this. And we're working through the process right now of seeing what the county's resources are, what we should do as a county, what an independent consultant will do. And like I say, we had a whole full day on this just a week ago. And I think at another time there should be a presentation, but I hesitate to even get into it right now because of the complexity of how it's done. I didn't know if you wanted Councilman to comment on any of this aspect of it.
On the overall agreement, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with what we have here. It far exceeds anything we otherwise could have legally mandated, and I just look forward to continue working with you on this. I'll say one thing, the 4% low income, we've already discussed some of the challenges there. I think we can have more conversation on how we could make it more effective so it's not as punishing on the owners of the companies and can be effective for the workforce themselves.
Well, and this is where, and I don't claim to have all the expertise, this is where the conversation of, pre-apprenticeship programs, this gets into the whole community benefits discussion, pre-apprenticeship programs, apprenticeships. So it's another conversation. It's an important one, but it's not today's conversation. Right. That's all part of the program. Now, critically, cost guarantee. We will have a cost guarantee. As I said, it will be in place by April 1st, and the design builder will absorb risks above the guaranteed maximum price. And there'll be a schedule guarantee. Liquidated damages, heavy liquidated damages, imposed for missing the substantial completion date and or missing the building opening date. There's also an obligation 6 months before opening where the design builder will have to tell us whether they think they're going to be late. If they think they're going to be late, we'll impose a penalty right then so that we can alert people who have shows that it'll be late. If they say it's not going to be late, we'll say great, but if they then are late, the penalty is much higher. So it's a process of balancing, but the liquidated damages are actually quite significant because it's serious if we don't open on time, and we are also depending on the revenue from the hotel to help us pay for debt service. So we have big consequences. Therefore, there are significant liquidated damages in the deal. Very quickly, and I know how late it is. Cooper Carey, once again, a fully negotiated criteria architect design services agreement will be presented for your signature. It involves preparation of design development documents, including all of the engineering, really all the work to get design, including all the engineering to get the concept design ready for what we call the GMP package. Review and approval. They will then review and approve of the plans and specifications prepared by the architect of record for conformance with the design concept, and there's a whole series of services they then provide throughout the remainder of the project. I believe in the resolution, this contract was to be not to exceed $6.5 million. We have one final piece because, as I told you, there's this question of where some engineers fall, and actually later today and tomorrow we're finalizing that, but I can tell you that the total contract value will probably be $1 million less than that. So it'll probably be in the vicinity of 5.5 million. There's a plus or minus 200 that we're working on right now. But Cooper Carey's base fee is 2.1 million. The remainder of that is some potential contingent additional services they'll provide, and then a range of their engineering consultants. So that'll be beneath that number that is in the resolution. The precise number will be in the contracts that you'll see. They'll be there on Tuesday. And then, I don't know, Majid or Bonnie, I don't know if you want to, these are, you're supposed to talk about my contracts. I'm not supposed to talk about my contracts. So.
Thank you, Jeff. On the items for PMC and for Thompson Hine, the total amount is about $5,030,000, of which $880,000 is for Thompson Hine and $4.15 million for PMC. Of the $4.15 million for PMC, there is about $650,000 for sub-consultants to PMC and the reimbursable expenses. That total amount is about 2% of the project cost. To give you some comparables, the Columbus Convention Center Hotel was about 4.2% for the project management fees. The Convention Center Hotel that we did here, the county had about $5 million in its legal fees and project management fees. And in addition to that, because we had a developer, MMPI, in between, we ended up paying an additional $14.5 million by using that model, of which we had about $12 million in the developer fee. We had $1.143 million in legal fees, MMPI's legal fees. There were other expenses total in the neighborhood of $14.5 million. We basically don't have any of those costs here because we're doing the project ourselves instead of using an intermediary. And the fees, we're using the combined Thompson Hine and PMC, and the total is about 2% of the project cost.
Could I?
Yes.
We're dealing obviously with 4 resolutions at once, and but I would like to ask you, Director, I think you just said that the management fees for the Convention Hotel in Columbus were 14%?
No, 4.2.
Okay, all right, because I couldn't make that.
4.2%.
I couldn't make that work. Okay.
No, we paid, or we're paying once we're done with the transition, about $14.5 million for MMPI's services to the Convention Center Hotel, but that's the 14 number. The number in Columbus is 4.2%. I'll be happy to answer any questions on those items, or I'll turn it back to Jeff.
We're gonna take a 5-minute break, and then we're gonna open for questions relating to the hotel project.
One thing just on the record, I want to say that base fee, that's actually split with another law firm, the 850. I did want to mention that. There's a firm, we have a subspecialist called Kutak Rook. They're a tax, on this QMA agreement, all they do, there's a lawyer that does nothing but assist on some of the tax issues and other issues on the QMA. So there's about $100,000 of that fee that is a sub-consultant expert we brought in. So we also have sub-consultants there. I'm sorry.
Our clocks are now on Eastern Standard Time. Is that correct? We've been corrected? So we're going to resume at 1 o'clock.
I mean,